Welcome to the Immigrantinlaw channel. Today we'll be discussing a topic that almost everyone who relocates to a new country faces, the rental agreement. At first glance, it might seem simple. You find an apartment, negotiate with the landlord, sign the documents, pay the security deposit, and you're ready to settle in. But it's precisely at this stage that many people make mistakes that end up costing them money, stress, and time. In this video, we'll take a look at what to pay attention to in a rent agreement before signing, which clauses might be risky, and what questions you should ask the landlord in advance. The first thing you should do is make sure you know who you're signing the agreement with. The agreement must include the landlord's details: first name, last name, address, contact information, and identification details, if required by local regulations. It's important to make sure the person actually has the right to rent out the apartment. Sometimes one person shows you the apartment, another asks for the money to be transferred, and a third person is listed in the agreement. This situation should raise a red flag. Ask for proof of ownership or a document showing that the person has the right to manage the apartment. In some countries, this may be an extract from the registry, a tax document, a power of attorney, or another official document. If the agreement is signed by the owner's representative, verify that they have the authority to do so. Verbal explanations are not sufficient. It is better to see a document confirming the right to represent the owner in advance. This is especially important for immigrants because the residential address is often used for registration, opening a bank account, submitting documents, obtaining insurance, or confirming residency. If problems arise with the agreement, this can affect not only your residence but also other important processes after relocation. The agreement must clearly specify the address of the rental object, city, street, house number, apartment, floor, and sometimes additional details, such as the number of a parking space, storage room, or room. It is also important that the agreement clearly states exactly what you are renting. Is it a separate apartment, a room, part of a house, or a residence with shared areas? Is there access to a balcony, parking, basement, laundry room, or yard? If you are renting furnished housing, it is advisable to have a list of furniture, appliances, and other items attached to the agreement. For example, refrigerator, washing machine, bed, wardrobe, table, air conditioner, water heater, and so on. Take photos of the apartment before signing. Document the condition of the walls, floors, furniture, appliances, windows, plumbing, locks, and meters. It's best to do this before you move in and save the photos with the date. Why is this important? When you move out, the landlord might claim that you damaged something, even though it was already damaged before you moved in. The photos and the handover report will help protect you and ensure you get your deposit back. The next important point is the term of the agreement. The agreement must specify the start and end dates of the rental period. Sometimes the agreement is for a fixed term, such as 6 months or 1 year. Sometimes it is automatically renewed unless the parties have notified each other of their intention to terminate the rent. Be sure to check what happens after the term ends. Does the agreement terminate automatically? Do you need to sign a new one? Is it renewed under the same terms? Can the landlord raise the rent after renewal? Also pay attention to the minimum stay requirement. Some agreements specify that the tenant cannot move out before a certain date without incurring a penalty. For example, if the agreement is for 1 year but you move out after 3 months, you may be required to pay for several more months or forfeit your security deposit. If you're not yet sure how long you'll be living in this city, choose terms with a clear and fair early termination policy. One of the most important sections is the rent amount. The agreement must specify the exact amount, currency, payment date, and payment method. For example, by what date each month the rent is due, the 1st, 5th, or 10th. Clarify exactly how payment is made: by bank transfer, through an app, in cash, or by another method. It's best to choose a method that provides you with proof of payment. If cash payments are allowed, be sure to ask for a receipt or confirmation of receipt. Without this, it will be difficult to prove later that you actually paid the rent. Also check if there is a penalty for late payment. In some agreements, a fixed amount or a daily interest rate is charged for late payments. You need to know this in advance. Separately, check whether the landlord can increase the rent during the term of the agreement. If so, under what conditions, how often, and by how much. Wording such as the landlord may change the rent at their discretion is risky. The price must be fixed, or the procedure for changing it must be clearly specified. A very common mistake is to focus solely on the rent amount and overlook additional fees. Before signing the rental agreement, be sure to clarify what is included in the rent and what is charged separately. Additional expenses may include electricity, water, heating, gas, internet, trash removal, building maintenance, elevator service, security, parking, cleaning of common areas, and tax or administrative fees. It's important to understand who pays for these expenses, the tenant or the landlord. If the tenant pays, how is the amount calculated? Based on meters, a fixed rate, or a shared building bill? Ask to see examples of bills from the past few months. This will help you understand the actual cost of living there. Sometimes the rent seems attractive, but utility bills turn out to be very high, especially in winter or summer, if heating or air conditioning is used. Also check who is responsible for setting up internet, gas, electricity, and other services. In some countries, the tenant signs agreements with service providers directly. In other cases, everything is registered under the owner's name, and the tenant simply reimburses the costs. The security deposit is one of the most contentious issues when renting accommodation. The agreement must specify the amount of the deposit, the payment date, and the conditions for its return. Typically, the deposit is required to cover potential damage to the apartment, unpaid bills, or breaches of the agreement. Pay attention to when the security deposit is returned after you move out. For example, within 7, 14, or 30 days after the keys are handed over. The more specific this is, the better. It is also important to specify under what circumstances the landlord may withhold the money. Normal wear and tear of the housing should not be equated with damage. For example, minor natural aging of furniture or signs of normal use are not the same as a broken door, a shattered window, or damaged appliances. Ask to include in the agreement a procedure for inspecting the apartment when you move in and move out. It's good practice to sign a handover report detailing the condition of the apartment, furniture, appliances, and meters. Do not hand over the security deposit without an agreement or written confirmation, and don't agree to phrases like "we'll take care of everything later." The document first, then payment. Before signing, be sure to check how you can terminate the agreement early. Life circumstances can change. A job in another city, a refusal to renew your documents, a change in educational institution, family reasons, or simply a desire to move to a different place. The agreement must specify how many days' notice you must give the landlord before moving out. For example, 30, 60, or 90 days. Also check if there is a penalty for early termination. Sometimes the penalty is equal to 1 month's rent. Sometimes the tenant is required to pay rent until the end of the agreement term, if a new tenant is not found. It is important that the notification procedure is clear. It is best to send the notice in writing, via email, through an official messaging app, or by certified mail, if this is customary in your country of residence. The main thing is that you have proof of the date of sending. Another important aspect is the repair and maintenance of the apartment. The agreement should clearly state who is responsible for minor repairs and who is responsible for major breakdowns. For example, if a light bulb burns out, this is usually the tenant's responsibility. But if the heating system breaks down, the roof leaks, the water heater isn't working, or there's a problem with the electrical wiring, it's usually the landlord's responsibility. Check how quickly the landlord is required to respond to requests. This is especially important when it comes to critical issues: heating, water, electricity, safety, locks, mold, and leaks. Also clarify whether you can call a repairman on your own and then deduct the cost of the repair from the rent. In most cases, doing this without the landlord's consent is risky. If the agreement states that the tenant is responsible for all damages without exception, this is a reason to carefully discuss the terms before signing. The rent agreement often includes rules regarding guests. Check whether guests are allowed and for how long. Some agreements specify that guests may stay for only a few days, while a longer stay by another person requires the landlord's consent. If you have a pet or plan to get one later, be sure to check the relevant clause. Sometimes pets are prohibited, sometimes they are allowed only with written consent, and sometimes an additional deposit is required. Also pay attention to restrictions on smoking, balcony use, noise after a certain time, installing an air conditioner, replacing furniture, drilling into walls, painting, rearranging furniture, and accommodating additional residents. If you want to make changes to the apartment, such as setting up a desk, hanging shelves, replacing curtains, or connecting additional appliances, it's best to obtain the landlord's written consent in advance. For those who are relocating abroad, a residential address often has legal implications. Before signing the agreement, confirm whether you can use this address for official registration, receiving mail, opening a bank account, obtaining insurance, a tax ID, a residence permit, or other documents. Sometimes landlords rent out apartments solely for living in, but do not allow tenants to register at that address. For an immigrant, this can become a serious problem. Make sure the landlord is willing to provide documents if needed: a copy of the agreement, proof of residence, consent for registration, receipts, or other certificates. If you need the rental agreement to submit to government agencies, check whether it meets the requirements of the specific country or agency. In some cases, a fixed-term agreement is required, with the exact address, details of the parties, and the owner's signature. If the agreement is written in a foreign language, do not sign it until you fully understand its contents. Even if the landlord says it's all standard, that doesn't mean the document is safe for you. Use a translator, lawyer, consultant, or someone who is fluent in the language and familiar with local regulations. Pay special attention to the sections on rent, penalties, terms, security deposits, termination, repairs, and liability. If you are given two versions of the agreement in different languages, clarify which version is legally binding. Sometimes the translation is provided only for convenience, and the version in the language of your country of residence is considered the official one. Never sign an agreement that contains blank lines, unfilled amounts, missing dates, or unclear attachments. All important terms must be included before signing: rent amount, security deposit, term, address, parties' details, inventory of furniture, payment terms, and move-out conditions. If you are promised something verbally, ask to have it added to the agreement. For example, the landlord promised to replace the washing machine, pets are allowed, parking is included in the rent, internet is already included in the rent. Verbal promises are difficult to prove. A written clause in the agreement protects you much better. There are situations where you should pause and double-check everything. For example, if you're being pressured to sign the agreement right away. If the landlord refuses to show you the documents. If you're asked to transfer the security deposit before viewing the accommodation, if the price is significantly below market value, if you're not given a copy of the agreement, if they refuse to specify the actual amounts, if they ask you to pay several months in advance without proof, if the terms keep changing. Also be careful if the agreement is too short and doesn't cover important issues. Sometimes, a lack of details works against the tenant. A good agreement shouldn't make you feel like something is being hidden from you. In a normal situation, both parties are interested in clear and transparent terms. Signing a rental agreement is an important step after relocating. It determines not only your comfort while living there, but also your financial security, your ability to obtain the necessary documents, and your peace of mind as you plan your life in a new country. Before signing, check the landlord's information, the address, the rent term, the rent amount, utility costs, the security deposit, move-out rules, responsibility for repairs, living conditions, and whether you can use the address for official purposes. Don't hesitate to ask questions. Don't sign a document you don't understand. Don't transfer money without confirmation. And always keep copies of the receipts, correspondence, and photos of the apartment. If you are planning to relocate to Europe and want to understand which country and which legalization route is right for you, submit a request for a free consultation with Immigrantinlaw's lawyers. We'll develop the optimal relocation strategy for you, prepare all the necessary documents, explain the nuances of the law in detail, and answer all your questions. We'll analyze your case, your goals, and your situation without using templates. Want to learn more or start the process today? Contact us. All contact details are listed in the description below this video. We're here to help you take a confident step toward a new life. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ask your questions in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. Discover a world of opportunities with Immigrantinlaw.